advisor for the Alpha Tau Sigma chapter of Phi Theta Kappa. Welcome to Ivy Tech Community College in Sellersburg. We are happy to have you join us today. On our campus, we are celebrating 50 years of educational excellence as our campus was founded in 1968. The Alpha Tau Sigma chapter of Phi Theta Kappa International Honor Society was chartered in 1991. We are celebrating 27 years of recognizing academic excellence with scholars on campus. Phi Theta Kappa is the International Honor Society for two-year colleges, and they are celebrating 100 years of existence and have become the largest honor society in the world with more than 3.2 million members worldwide. Phi Theta Kappa has an honors program called Honors in Action, designed to engage students in informed action that fosters student success and helps fulfill our mission to provide college students opportunities to grow as scholars and leaders. By participating in a chapter's Honors in Action project, members have opportunity to apply learning and practice real-world problem solving by developing an in-depth, action-oriented project related to research of an honor study topic. Academic research into the themes related to the honor study topic is what makes Phi Theta Kappa Honors Program unique and defines the difference between Honors in Action and simply action. Honors in Action is action informed by research, which makes a lasting impact and contributes to the betterment of the society. After 2 semesters of research, many meetings, and much discussion, today we host our project and hope that we meet the goals and purpose of Honors in Action. Today in our Voices for Recovery rally, we celebrate the annual National Recovery Month by hosting prevention, treatment, and recovery exhibits. Thank you to all of you for being here. Educational events, rally and walk to honor the recovery community, and a memorial for victims of overdose death. We will now hear the story of 4 local students that are in recovery and their personal story. We will also hear from Jim McLeland, Indiana Director for Drug Prevention, Treatment, and Enforcement, Kevin Moore, FSSA Director of the Division of Mental Health and Addiction, and we will also hear from Ivy Tech College's President, Sue Elsperman. Our first student speaker is Aisha Cornelius. She is a graduate of Ivy Tech Community College, Madison, and now a current student at Ivy Tech in Madison, seeking a 2nd degree. She also volunteers in her community, and we are very happy to have Aisha with us today.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
I just want to say thank you guys for the opportunity to be here in Sellersburg. It's a nice campus. Thank you. Hello, my name is Aisha, and I am an addict. Today has brought us all here together, for it's therapeutic for one addict helping another. I want to share my experience, strength, and hope with you guys today. I'm going to tell you about my life in active addiction and how my life is now. My story began when I was 18 years old. I had tried meth for the first time. I had drank beer and tried marijuana, but meth had me. I did meth for about 6 months, until one day I was at a drug house and everyone was getting high, and I seen a woman shoot up drugs into her veins. That scared me, for I was young and I was inexperienced, not knowing what I would face down the road. From that moment on, I never touched meth again. It scared me that bad. But I didn't know soon enough that I would find my best friend. I didn't know I'd find my family. I didn't know I'd find my true love, and that was crack cocaine. At first, it started off with me snorting cocaine, and then I went to smoking it. I didn't imagine the hell I would face due to my passionate relationship I had developed with crack and the devil. Crack grabbed a hold of me, and I became a slave to it and for it. I prostituted, I lied, I stole, and manipulated to get to that next high. During my addiction, I made the conscious decision to go get someone some drugs. I didn't know he had set me up. I went to prison for being a street-level drug dealer. I was 23 years old, and the judge gave me 12 years. I only got the guy a $20 rock and had never been in trouble before. That's pretty deep, huh? But I needed that to happen. That part of my life still sticks with me today. It has helped me to become the person I am today. I was devastated, wondering how did I get here? But that's what drugs and that life promises: jails, institutions, and death. I smoked crack with my own mother, but ultimately my mother's addiction caught up with her, and she passed away in June of 2015. She was 49 years old. And when she passed away, my mother was 60 pounds from the drugs and the alcohol. That hurt, but she had to die so I could live. I learned that I didn't want to die young. When I did drugs, I never thought about the effects it would have on me physically, mentally, spiritually, or emotionally. I had never felt so alone in my life. Crack had me. I tried getting clean and going to different rehabs, but to no avail. I couldn't stay clean. I was hooked. It wasn't until October 10, 2010 that I meet in 2010, did my higher power, which I call God, bring an angel into my life that would forever change me. I met my wife. She has held me accountable, and she has supported me through my addiction and where my life is now. We left Terre Haute, Indiana, and moved to Madison, Indiana, and that's when my life began to change. I found recovery, I got a job, enrolled at Ivy Tech for addictions counseling, and got married. Yes, someone actually loved me despite my addiction. Life started looking up. Then my second love began to take over my life, and that is alcohol. My life was back in turmoil. I gave up one addiction for another. So on June 4th of 2017, I went to Landmark Recovery in Louisville, Kentucky, and that's when my journey began. They helped me to heal from my childhood traumas that I had suffered from when I was a kid. Because we cannot begin to recover from the alcohol and the drugs until we begin to heal emotionally and mentally from the past. The drugs and the alcohol and the traumas from the past are the problem. I ended up graduating from Landmark, and that's when my life began to live in the fullest. I just graduated from Ivy Tech, made a commercial there in Louisville about my life and addiction and recovery. This hopeless addict also works at a women's treatment center in Lexington, Indiana, Centerstone Women's Recovery Center, helping others to recover from addiction. Who would have thought after all the adversity I have faced, I'm sitting up here telling you that I made it. I fought to be the woman you see for you today. When I would have thought after all the adversity I faced, I would be standing up here telling you I made it. I fought to be the woman you see today. They say we all wouldn't normally mix, but today we sit here, different sexes, occupation, viewpoints, and races. But we all have one common denominator: addiction. But we do recover. So I'll close by saying this. This woman standing before you was once lost to the streets and addiction, has found a new way of life, and that's the most amazing feeling in the world. I am now living life on life's terms. More people have died because of this addiction than people in World War II. We all have to stand up and get clean and sober to help the next addict or alcoholic start their journey of life. I want to tell you a little story. This little girl was walking down the ocean, and there were starfish everywhere. And she was throwing them back into the ocean, and a man walks up and says, "What are you doing? You can't save all them." She picked up another starfish and she threw it. And she said, "Well, I saved that one." And that's what we all got to do, is pick up a starfish. And that's another addict, that's another alcoholic that is suffering. We have to throw them back into the ocean because they need us. Thank you.
Aisha, for sharing your story with us. We will now hear from Erin Hairston. She is a graduate of Henryville High School. She is a student at Galen College of Nursing. Erin plans to transfer to Jefferson Community and Technical College for political science. Let's welcome Erin.
Sorry, I gotta get my speech pulled up. First of all, I'd like to thank Twyla. She asked me to come speak here today. Twyla is one of my mom's best friends and has known me since I was born. One of her sons is actually exactly a day older than me. So she's gotten to see the woman that, the girl that I was and the woman that I've transformed into. So it's a blessing that, that she would see that in me and think that that I was somebody that could, share my story amongst all of you. Hello, everyone. My name is Erin Hairston, and I am a recovering addict. My story in addiction isn't that different from other stories. However, I don't come from the stereotypical past of what most people assume that drug addicts have. I had a wonderful childhood, one that most people dream of having when they're little. I have exceptional parents who have been there with me every step of the way. They've been there for every milestone, every sporting event, every award ceremony, and every accomplishment. Even when I almost lost my dad to a brain aneurysm and things got hard for my family when we almost lost everything. Sorry, that makes me emotional. My parents were still there. They still guided me. They still gave to me even when they didn't have it. They would go out of their way to find a way to make things possible for me, even whenever they couldn't make things possible for themselves at the time. Right after my dad's aneurysm, my mom, about a year later, lost her job and was in and out of unemployment while my dad couldn't work for a year. And then he became a janitor at his school, and where most people would have been embarrassed, I was just proud because my parents were going out of their way to take care of my brother and I. They could have both given up. They could have both thrown in the towel, and they chose not to. And I think that's a huge statement of what my parents were for me growing up, because it's because of my mom and my dad that that I'm the woman that I am today, and that I'm standing here before you alive, because they're my angels and they're who saved my life. They never stopped being there for me, and they never stopped believing in me. I was a great student from kindergarten until I graduated high school. All the way up until my junior year, I never got lower than a B, ever. I graduated with a 3.48 GPA and with academic honors and academic scholarships. I was a student athlete. If you can name the sport, I probably tried it once, except for golf, because I didn't want to be a golfer because my dad tried to make me be. So you gotta stick it to the man sometimes. But you name it, and I tried it, and I excelled in athletics too. I'm a perfectionist, and I have to be perfect at everything I do, and sports were no different. I was on a regional championship volleyball team that went to semi-state and placed Final Four in the state of Indiana. I was on a softball team that won sectional 5 years in a row with a coach that had played softball at a D1 college. I was all conference and all academic my senior year in softball. I was a cheerleader, and you all might not think that is a sport, but I'm telling you, try to do a toe touch and you're going to think different. Okay? I'm just saying. If you ask my former teachers what they think of me and what they thought my life would be, they'll tell you that I'm supposed to be the President of the United States, because I'm a politician at heart. I can hold an argument for days, weeks, sometimes years, depending on what it is. And that's my passion in life, is to hold my stance and hold my ground and stand up for the things I believe in. My teachers would tell you that I'm not supposed to be standing up here today speaking about recovering from heroin addiction, recovering from drug addiction, because it wasn't just heroin, it was whatever you put in front of my face. I was the one in high school that didn't drink, that thought smoking pot made you a junkie. I was the DD for my friends. My best friend's parents, I call them mom and dad too, because that's just how close we are. They felt safe if their daughter was at a late night party with me, because I was going to get everyone home in my big Durango, safe as can be because I wouldn't be drinking and I definitely wouldn't be smoking. I was the person that got down on my friends that did do pills, because in a small town community where I'm from, drinking and drugging is sometimes what they say the only thing to do. It's a huge, huge problem in rural communities because of the fact that sometimes there really isn't anything to do, and you find yourself at these big kegger parties and these people with weed and these people with pills, and a lot of my friends got trapped into that at a very early age, and were on the basketball court throwing up because they just popped an Ocana before they took the basketball court. But my senior year of high school, that changed for me. I found alcohol, and that really, I never really liked the taste of it, but I'll tell you what, I liked being drunk. I did. I liked the way I felt. I've suffered unknowingly probably for the first half of my life from depression and anxiety, and I have very low self-esteem and very low self-worth, and alcohol changed all that for me. And then I found marijuana, and to some this might not be a gateway drug, but to me this is the thing that changed everything. I fell in love, absolutely fell in love, and what I didn't know was the lifestyle that I was about to get into, because drugs were a foreign concept to me. They were things that I had only heard about in Hollywood. That was my knowledge of drugs. I knew that an uncle of mine had passed away before I met him from a heroin overdose, and so I knew it was bad, and so I was never going to shoot up. But that's about as far as my concept of drugs went. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I went to college and I continued my partying. I came home after one semester to go to a local university. Then my life changed drastically. I started dabbling in pain pills and thought I had found something that had finally made me feel good about myself. I started losing weight and feeling confident. I had been probably 120, 130 until my senior year, and you get the munchies when you smoke weed, and I got them hard, so I gained a lot of weight. And for me, I was super self-conscious about that. There are certain people that I've grown up around that being skinny and being pretty was more important than being a good person. And so when I gained weight and one of those people told me that I was fat and should probably drop some pounds, when I found drugs, I dropped the pounds, and that self-esteem was coming back. These drugs felt like a cure for me. This was an on-again, off-again type of thing until one day when it wasn't. And the pain pills ran out, and as most people did, I turned to heroin. I dropped out of college. I was an unreliable employee. I was a lying, manipulated friend and daughter. But this wasn't even the worst part of my addiction. I got off heroin for about 9 months, but I continued my journey with alcohol and marijuana. I had something to smoke with my weed out of from the time I woke up until I went to bed. I couldn't start my day without it, and I definitely couldn't end my day without it. Sleep was not possible without a drink and a blunt, pretty much, for me. After that 9 months, I was working. I had a full-time job and a normal routine. I was paying my bills. And for me, I met a boy, and that boy did heroin. It did not take that boy convincing me. I think I need to make that very clear. I made the decision on my own to go back to something that I had fallen in love with months before that. It was no second guessing. There was no should I or shouldn't I. It was just, I'm going in head first, diving in, no question about it. And I did. At first it was just supposed to be, I'll only do it on the weekends type of thing. I won't shoot up again. And that lasted for a few months, and I thought I had this under control. I was only going to do just enough to enjoy. No overspending, no overdoing, just enough. But then, just like always, if you're an addict, you know this, it gets worse, never better. I turned into shooting up heroin again. I was an intravenous drug user, and it wasn't just heroin, it was anything that I could put in a spoon and pull up in a syringe. I would put it in my veins, and I had no second thoughts about it at all whatsoever. The next year and a half was a journey through the darkest depths of hell that I've ever been on. I met the devil face to face in that time period of my life. I turned back into that liar and manipulator. I could have won an Oscar for my acting performances to get money from my parents or from my boyfriend's parents or even my friends. I would call people up and just ask for $30 because I just needed to not be sick. And I was good at it. I'm telling you, I could have went to the Oscars and won. There was no question about it. I turned into a human being that wasn't a human any longer. I was a zombie and I was a monster and my soul was gone. The devil had taken it and I was going to let him keep it. I had no intentions of getting it back at all whatsoever. I became a walking zombie. I had no remorse for how I treated people, not until I started to sober up. But as we know, guilt, shame, and remorse set in when we sober up, and the guilt would drive me back into another fix. And that was more than enough reason to stop feeling guilty, and more than enough reason to stay high as consistently as possible. Thankfully, on New Year's Eve of 2015, God saw fit to save a wretch like me. Life finally changed for me. After a couple days of sleeping and sneaking out of my parents' house to still get high, sorry, I couldn't see. I finally surrendered. I got in the car with my hero, my dad. When my dad had his brain aneurysm, I'm the one that called 911 and was at home with him, and he'll tell you I saved his life. And I think that God works miracles every day and has a plan in place for each of us. And I saved my dad's life when I was 13 years old, so my dad could save mine when I turned 22. He took me to the Women's Healing Place, which is a homeless shelter and recovery center in Louisville, Kentucky. It's free. You are not required to have insurance. You're not required to pay anything up front. You can just go and get the help you need. My sobriety date is January 2nd of 2016, and it is a day that I have kept for the past 2.5 years. I spent 7.5 months in the recovery program and stayed there a total of 10 months. I owe that facility everything. The women there saved my life. They loved me when I could not love myself. And since that first day in detox, which was rough, my detox was horrible. I weighed 100 and I don't even think I weighed 100 pounds. My spine was coming out of my back and you could see every bone in my body. I was losing hair on the top of my head. I lied to them and told them I wasn't coming off Xanax too, and because of that I had a seizure at the Women's Healing Place. Thankfully, for some reason, the EMTs were already there for somebody else, and when my blood pressure dropped to 63/34, they rushed me to the emergency room. And that saved my life right there, too. Just another small, sign from God that I was right where I was supposed to be. I spent a total of 10 months living in the Healing Place. I did their Peer Mentor program, which is a program where they employ people who have just finished the program for 3 months and allow them to help the women with their step work and their homework. And you are a peer support specialist pretty much for 3 months. And it's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. I actually got fired from that position because I was dating a boy I wasn't supposed to be dating. I was a problem child in rehab. I spent a lot of time writing a lot of words about my problems and why I couldn't follow directions and why I was stuck on my mommy and daddy and couldn't come away from them. I wasn't allowed to see my parents for 4 weeks. And if you know, I wasn't even allowed to speak to them. And if you know me, you'll know that my mom and my dad are two of the most important people in my entire life, and it felt like my whole world was crumbling and falling around me for that 4 weeks. But I'll tell you what, I'm an independent woman today because of it. I'm a reliable employee today because of that. I'm a driven college student again, and I found my meaning and my calling in life to help those just like me and to help maybe change the laws and change some stigma around who we are. I have a best friend, and she has 2 children, and I'm allowed to babysit them today. I'm allowed to be in the home with her again today, and I did her worse than I did anybody else other than my mom and my dad in my addiction. The people that I hurt the worst have welcomed me with open arms and given me a love that I don't deserve. I never thought I would make it out of that downward spiral. I just knew in my head that I was sure to die a young death from this awful substance that had become an epidemic in this country. I knew in my heart that I was just going to be another statistic. A month ago to the day, I celebrated my 25th birthday, sober. 3 years ago, when I was still in the scariest part of my addiction, I didn't think I'd live to even see 23, much less 25. I welcomed death at that time, and today I fear it. I don't want to leave this life that I have begun to create. I don't want to lose this love and passion for life that I have gained again. Being an addict and going through what I went through has changed everything about me. Before, I was judgmental, with a mindset that I was better than people. I looked down on those that weren't up to the standards that I created for them in my head. I was entitled and felt like my parents in life owed me something. Now I couldn't be any different from that little girl. Now I'm a woman. I believe in patience, love, and tolerance. I believe that everyone deserves a second chance and that forgiveness is a must, even if the people that you're forgiving are not sorry and still don't like you. I have found that my calling in life is to help people just like me, and the people that society deems as dispensable. My hope is that the state of Indiana can follow suit behind Kentucky. Former Governor Ernie Fletcher enacted a Recovery First program during his time in office, and it allowed the Kentucky Department of Corrections to pair with long-term rehabilitation centers across the state and send inmates to it. The Healing Place is one of these facilities. What they do is the Department of Corrections sends women there, and upon completion, they're off of parole or probation. They have to still go for drug tests. They're still allowed to go for court dates. And things of that nature, and multiple recovery centers across the state of Kentucky are in line with this. The Brighton Center is in Florence, Kentucky. The Hope Center is in Lexington, Kentucky. There's one in Hazard, Kentucky, and one in Harlan, Kentucky that also does this. There's a men's facility, the Men's Healing Place. There is a men's Healing Place facility in Campbellsville, Kentucky. Every single one of these recovery centers are free. You do not have to have insurance. You're not required to have anything except a willingness to change your life. These places are also free to neighboring counties, which is how I was allowed to get in. And I've watched these places change lives. Throwing men and women back onto the streets is not the answer to this epidemic, and I don't think jail necessarily is either. We have recovery systems in jail, but even after those recovery systems, upon parole or probation, they go back to the same exact lifestyle that they came from. Not everyone has the money to go to a halfway house. Not everybody has the money to pay a weekly rent. Not everybody has a resume that they can just turn in wherever and get a job because they're felons, or they have a theft charge, or they have a manufacturing charge, or they have a trafficking charge. Places don't look fondly on that on your resume. I think it's wonderful that there is now the second chance felon companies that hire felons and give them a second opportunity to change their life and get back into things. I hope Indiana can find a way to try this, to establish more recovery across the state and to help as much as we can. I hope that we can lose the stigma and stop the hate, because those of us that are addicts, we're not the homeless bums you see on the streets. We are doctors, we are lawyers, we are nurses, we are the people that you sit next to when you're at the movies who look like a normal couple, but really they just shot up in their car before they came in. We are mothers and fathers and daughters and sons and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles. We are people too, and we have people that love us and care about us and genuinely want us to live. My parents didn't give up on me, and I don't think it's fair to give up on others just because maybe they're a little bit worse off. There's this choice versus disease debate, and really, who are we to say anything? Leave that up to the doctors and the nurses and the psychiatrists. I think the important thing right now is to help, to be the light in someone's darkness, because if everyone would have left me and given up on me, I would be dead. I would be in a coffin 6 feet under the ground with a tombstone with a date of death far, far earlier than I need to have. Life has given me a second opportunity to change things and to be that beacon of hope for somebody, to give somebody the opportunity to want what I have. And it's because of people that came before me that I have, that have what I want, that have allowed me to have this opportunity. Again, I just would really like to thank all of you for coming and supporting this rally for recovery. It's a huge deal, and thank you for allowing me to speak.